The vintage 2005 Bollinger hissed as I popped the cork, the sound of celebration filling our candlelit dining room. 20 years. 2 whole decades of marriage, of building a life together, of being the woman behind the man everyone called a genius. I had spent the entire afternoon preparing Mark's favorite meal, herb-crusted lamb with roasted vegetables, the dish I made the night he proposed. "Happy 20th, Mark," I said, my voice thick with the kind of warmth you only build after sharing 7,300 days of dreams, fears, and hopes with someone. I reached for his hand across the table, but he didn't take it. Instead, he slid a thick, cold manila envelope across the mahogany table we'd picked out together on our 5th anniversary. The envelope knocked over his untouched crystal flute. The champagne pooled on the wood like a widening wound, dripping onto the Persian rug below. "I'm done, Diane," he said flatly. "I've already moved my things to the penthouse downtown. Mia is waiting for me there." My hand froze in midair. Mia. His 24-year-old assistant. The girl who brought him coffee and laughed too loud at his jokes during board meetings. He didn't look sad. He didn't even look guilty. He looked bored, as if he were filing a routine report rather than ending a marriage. "You've become stagnant, Diane. I need someone who matches the speed of my life now. Someone who doesn't remind me of when I was a nobody." Before we continue, I would like to know where you're watching from in the comment section. Also hit the subscribe button and share this video, as this will help this video to travel far so others can learn also. My heart didn't break in that moment. It turned to stone in my chest, cold and heavy. I looked at the man whose laundry I'd folded for 20 years, whose late-night anxieties I'd soothed when investors said no, whose ego I'd carefully inflated through every failed venture and desperate restart. He was wearing a $4,000 suit I'd picked out for him last month. His hair was freshly cut at the salon I'd recommended. Even his confidence, that smug, unshakable certainty he wore like cologne, had been built by me brick by brick, compliment by compliment. "Mia," I whispered, the name tasting like ash in my mouth. He stood up, adjusting his cufflinks with a casual flick of his wrists. "Don't make this a scene, Diane. I've left you the house and a generous monthly stipend. Just sign the papers and let me go public with my life. You were a great starter wife. But I'm a mogul now. I need someone who fits that image." Starter wife. The words echoed in my head like a slap. I had given him my 20s and my entire 40s. I had postponed my own dreams, my own career, my own identity to build his. And now I was disposable packaging, something to be discarded once the product was successful. Let me tell you who I really am. My name is Diane Mitchell Sterling. I am 44 years old, a mother of 2 incredible daughters, and for 20 years, I played the role of the supportive spouse to a man who thought he was a self-made god. Mark Sterling thinks he's the king of this city because his tech startup, Aegis Security Solutions, is 3 months away from a billion-dollar IPO. He thinks he's a genius because the business journals call him visionary and disruptive. He thinks he bootstrapped his way from nothing to the top of the tech world through pure talent and determination. What he's forgotten, or rather what I made absolutely sure he never found out, is that bootstraps don't magically produce $10 million in seed funding. I do. Well, technically my father does. But I'm the one who orchestrated the whole thing. I'm the one who sat in late-night strategy meetings while Mark slept peacefully, believing his charm had won over mysterious elite investors. I'm the one who protected his ego by hiding the truth for an entire decade. And now, on our 20th anniversary, he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. 10 years ago, Mark sat on our kitchen floor at 2 in the morning crying like a child. His third startup had just collapsed. The investors had pulled out. His co-founders had abandoned him. He was a failure, drowning in debt with a wife and 2 young daughters depending on him. I held him that night, wiping his tears, promising him it would be okay. But inside I was already forming a plan. The next morning I drove to my father's estate on the outskirts of the city. My father, Richard Mitchell, is the man Mark loves to mock at family dinners. The plant guy, Mark calls him, still smells like fertilizer even in a suit. What Mark doesn't know is that my father's plant business is actually a cover for his real empire. Yes, he owns a chain of high-end nurseries and landscaping companies. But he's also a quiet titan of commercial real estate and private equity. He doesn't flaunt his wealth. He doesn't need to. "Daddy," I said, sitting in his oak-paneled study, "I need your help. Mark needs one more chance. But he can't know it's from us. His ego won't survive it. My father smiled. Within a week we had created the Apex Trust, an anonymous venture capital firm registered in Delaware with layers of legal protection. We funneled $10 million into Mark's new idea, Aegis Security Solutions. Mark thought his pitch deck was brilliant. He thought his charisma had attracted elite, mysterious investors who saw his genius. He would come home from meetings puffing his chest, telling me about the New York money guys, who believed in him. I sat at dinner, smiling, nodding, saying, "I'm so proud of you, honey," while knowing every single dollar came from my father's accounts. The New York money guys were my father's lawyers reading from scripts I had written. For 10 years I watched Mark's company grow. I watched him hire a team, develop products, win contracts with major corporations. I watched him become the man he always dreamed of being. And I never ever told him the truth. I convinced myself I was protecting him. That his confidence was fragile. That knowing the truth would break him. But deep down I think I always knew this moment would come. The moment when his success would make him forget where he came from. The moment when I would become inconvenient. The Apex Trust wasn't just an investment. It was insurance. And the policy was about to pay out. The morning after our anniversary, a moving van arrived at our house. Mark was taking his remaining shoes, his tech gadgets, and apparently his dignity. Mia sat in the passenger seat of his silver Porsche, wearing my daughter's oversized university hoodie, the one Chloe had left in his car after he drove her to campus last month. Mia blew a bubble with her gum and waved a manicured hand at me, her lips curled in a smirk. She thought she'd won. She thought she'd stolen a billionaire from a boring housewife. I didn't scream. I didn't throw rocks at the Porsche. I didn't collapse on the lawn in tears like a character in a bad movie. Instead, I stood on the porch, my phone in my hand, and sent a one-line email to my father's head of legal, Richard Pembroke. The key man has breached the moral character clause. Initiate the full audit of Apex Trust agreements immediately. I hit send and watched the van pull away. Mark didn't even glance back at the house. Why would he? He thought he'd outgrown this place. He thought he'd outgrown me. He had no idea that his entire empire was built on sand. And I was about to pan. Hour after the moving van left, my phone buzzed. A text from Mark. "I saw you standing on the porch. You looked pathetic, Diane. Get a hobby. Join a book club. Do yoga. Just don't think you're getting a piece of the IPO. My lawyers have ironclad proof I built Aegis solo. You were just a housewife. You contributed nothing." I stared at the message, reading it twice. 3 times. Each word was a knife, but I didn't bleed. Instead, I felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. Clarity. Purpose. I typed back a single sentence. "I hope you're right." Then I called my father. "Daddy's time. Pull everything." There was a pause on the line. Then in his calm, steady voice he said, "Are you absolutely sure, sweetheart? Once we do this, there's no going back." I've never been more sure of anything in my life. All right then. Let's show him who he really is. 2 days after Mark moved out, my father was at the local hardware store, dressed in his usual weekend outfit, faded jeans and a dirt-stained work shirt. He was picking up supplies for the community garden project he funded anonymously every year. Mark pulled up in his Porsche, there to grab a smart lock system for his new penthouse. He saw my father in the gardening aisle and actually walked over with a $5 bill in his hand. "Here, old man," Mark said, pressing the bill into my father's palm. "Go buy yourself a beer. And hey, tell Diane she can keep all the gardening tools in the divorce. She'll need a hobby now that she's got nothing else to do." My father looked at the $5. Then he looked at Mark. His expression didn't change, but I knew that look. It was the same look he gave to corrupt city council members who tried to block his development projects. The look of a man who knows exactly how much power he holds. "Everything grows from the dirt, Mark," my father said calmly, tipping his baseball cap. "Even the things you think are made of gold." Mark laughed and walked away, not understanding. He never understood metaphors. He only understood money and power, and he thought he had both. I needed ammunition before the real battle began. So I called my old college roommate, Elena Rodriguez, who now worked as the head of internal auditing at Aegis. We'd stayed close over the years, meeting for lunch once a month, talking about our lives. "Elena, I need a favor," I said carefully. "I'm worried about the divorce settlement. Mark's been spending a lot lately, and I need to know if it's affecting the company finances. Just a fact check." Nothing formal. Elena was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Diane, honey, are you sure you want to know? I need to know. Within an hour she sent me a confidential report. Mark had been using the company's Series B funding, money that was supposed to go toward product development, to pay for Mia's $15,000 a month apartment in the luxury high-rise downtown. He'd also been writing off her consulting fees, which were really just jewelry shopping sprees and spa days. He was embezzling from his own company. The company my father had funded. The company that was about to go public with fraudulent books. I saved every document Elena sent. Then I forwarded them to Richard Pembroke with a note. Add this to the file. Mark's company was burning through cash to prepare for the IPO. The marketing campaign alone was costing millions. They needed the final milestone payment from the Apex Trust. $5 million that would get them across the finish line. I sat in my father's mahogany-lined office, wearing a headset, listening to the conference call on mute. Mark's voice came through the speakers, dripping with arrogance and impatience. Look, we're ready, he said. The IPO is locked in. Goldman Sachs is on board. I've cleared out the domestic distractions at home, so there's no risk of personal drama affecting the company. My path is completely clear now. Why are the funds today? The Apex representative, a lawyer reading from my script, spoke calmly. Mr. Sterling, we've been reviewing your file. We've noticed some changes in your personal situation. Section 8.4 of your funding contract states that any significant personal litigation that could lead to a liquidity event or reputational damage allows the trust to pause all funding pending a full audit. There was silence. Then Mark's voice, suddenly sharp with panic. What litigation? It's just a standard divorce. My wife is a housewife with no career. She has zero leverage. This is just a formality. I pressed the mute button harder, feeling the power shift like electricity in my fingertips. Mark, if only you knew. That evening my oldest daughter, Chloe, came home from her summer internship at Aegis. She'd been so proud to work at her father's company, to learn the business from the inside. She was studying computer science at Stanford, hoping to follow in his footsteps. But when she walked through the door, her face was blotchy and red from crying. She dropped her bag on the floor and collapsed into my arms. Mom, she sobbed, Dad told me I can't work there anymore. He said it's too awkward for Mia to have me around. He said I should come ask you for tuition money because he's reinvesting all his liquid assets into the IPO. I held her, stroking her hair, feeling something dark and cold settle over me. He could hurt me. He could humiliate me. He could throw away 20 years like garbage. But he would never ever hurt my daughter's futures. Don't worry, baby, I whispered. Your tuition is safe. And your father is about to learn a very important lesson about family. That was the moment my mercy died. Friday came. Payroll for 200 employees was due by 5 p.m. The Apex Trust wire, $5 million, never arrived. I parked my car across the street from the Aegis headquarters, a gleaming glass tower in the financial district. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see Mark pacing back and forth in the executive conference room they called the war room. He was screaming into his phone, his face red, his tie loosened. I could see his gestures getting wilder, more desperate. The board members around the table looked terrified. Numbers flashed on the big screen behind him. Cash flow projections, burn rates, payroll obligations. Without that $5 million, the company couldn't make payroll. Without payroll, the employees would panic. Without employees, there was no IPO. The whole house of cards was collapsing in real time. I watched through the glass, sipping my coffee, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. Mark looked small suddenly. Powerless. He looked exactly like the man who had cried on my kitchen floor 10 years ago, begging the universe for one more chance. I had given him that chance. And he had thrown it away for a girl young enough to be his daughter. My phone rang. Mark's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Diane, he said, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. I need you to do something for me. There's been a delay with one of our investors. Just a paperwork issue. But I need a bridge loan. Just a few million. I'll pay you back after the IPO. I paused, letting the silence stretch. A few $1 million, Mark? Where would I get that kind of money? I'm just a housewife, remember? Diane, please. This isn't the time for games. I know your father has money. Just ask him. Tell him it's a guaranteed return. The IPO is happening. We just need to get through this week. I almost laughed. You want me to ask my father, the man you call the plant guy, the man you mock at every family dinner, to save your company? Diane, our daughter's futures depend on this company. If Aegis fails, their college funds, their trust funds, everything goes away. You need to help me. For them. Now I did laugh, cold and sharp. No, Mark. You needed to think about our daughters before you fired Chloe to make your mistress comfortable. You needed to think about their futures before you spent their college fund on Mia's apartment. This is your mess. Clean it up yourself. I hung up before he could respond. With the company accounts frozen and the funding delayed, Mark's personal credit cards, all linked to his business equity, started getting declined. He'd been living beyond his means for months, funding his new lifestyle with Mia on the assumption that the IPO would make him personally wealthy. Mia went shopping at the designer boutique downtown, the one where she'd been spending thousands every week. She handed over Mark's Black American Express card, the one with no limit, expecting the usual deferential treatment. The machine beeped. Declined. She tried again. Declined. The sales associate who had been fawning over her minutes before, suddenly looked uncomfortable. I'm sorry, miss. Do you have another form of payment? Mia's face went red. She grabbed her phone and called Mark right there in the store. Her voice was loud enough that other shoppers turned to stare. What do you mean the card is blocked? I'm standing here like an idiot. This is humiliating. I didn't sign up for this. You told me you were about to be a billionaire. Fix this now. Mark, sitting in a board meeting trying to calm nervous investors, had to excuse himself to deal with his mistress's tantrum. By the end of the day, everyone in the company had heard about it. The power couple narrative was crumbling. A week later we met for the first mediation session. The conference room was all glass and chrome, overlooking the city skyline. Mark sat with his high-priced divorce lawyer Richard Klein, a man known for crushing stay-at-home wives in court. Mark looked different. His suit was wrinkled. His hair was messy. The confident smirk was gone, replaced by dark circles under his eyes and a nervous energy that made him tap his pen constantly against the table. Klein slid a document across the table. Mrs. Sterling, my client is prepared to offer you a very generous settlement. $5 million, the house and monthly alimony. In exchange, you sign a non-disclosure agreement and relinquish any claim to Aegis Security Solutions or its future earnings. I didn't even look at the paper. Instead, I looked directly at Mark. Tell your lawyer who really funded your Series A, Mark. Tell him where the $10 million came from. Mark's jaw clenched. That's irrelevant. Apex Trust is a legitimate VC firm. They made an investment. Tell him who owns Apex Trust. Mark's lawyer looked confused. Mr. Sterling, what is she talking about? I pulled a folder from my bag, a thick folder prepared by Richard Pembroke. I slid it across the table. These are the articles of incorporation for Apex Trust Ventures, LLC. That's my father's signature on page 3 as chairman. That's my signature on page 5 as sole beneficiary and lead investment strategist. Klein opened the folder. His expression changed from confident to confused to horrified in about 30 seconds. He looked at Mark. You took $10 million from your wife's family trust? I didn't know. Mark shouted, slamming his fist on the table. She never told me. She let me believe it was real investors. She manipulated me. I kept my voice calm, ice cold. I didn't manipulate you, Mark. I saved you. You were drowning in debt and failure. I gave you the chance to build something real. I just made sure you never knew who your fairy godmother was. I wanted to protect your ego. This is fraud. Mark yelled. She tricked me into what? I interrupted. Into accepting money for your business? Into signing legal contracts? Everything was above board, Mark. You just never asked the right questions because you were too busy believing your own press. Klein was reading through the contracts now, his face getting paler. Mr. Sterling, these agreements have a moral character clause. And a key man provision. If you're removed as CEO or if there's a material change in your personal circumstances that affects company stability, the trust can call the loan, I finished. All $10 million. Plus interest. Plus penalties. Due immediately. Mark's face went from red to white. You can't do this. I'll fight you. You what? You have no money. Your company is bleeding cash. Your reputation is destroyed. I didn't just fund you, Mark. I own the debt you used to buy that Porsche. I am the elite investor you've been trying to impress for 10 years. Mark stood up so fast his chair fell backward. This is a trap. You planned this. You wanted me to fail. No, I said quietly. I wanted you to succeed. I gave you everything. Money, support, belief. I built you up when no one else would. But you got arrogant. You forgot where you came from. You forgot who was standing beside you the whole time. His lawyer tried to calm him down, but Mark was spiraling. The board will never allow this. They need me. The IPO depends on me. I stood up, gathering my folder. The board doesn't need you, Mark. They need the technology. They need the contracts. They need the funding. You're just the face. And faces can be replaced. I walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Mark? That moral character clause? It's triggered by infidelity, misuse of company funds, and behavior that damages corporate reputation. You've hit all three. Your lawyers can explain the details. I left him there, collapsing into his chair, the weight of his choices finally crushing him. The Aegis board of directors held an emergency meeting that night. They'd just learned that the anonymous beneficiary of their primary funding source was the CEO's soon-to-be ex-wife. And that beneficiary was about to call a $10 million loan unless significant changes were made. I didn't attend the meeting. I didn't need to. My father's lawyers presented the situation clearly. Keep Mark as CEO and lose all funding, or remove him and restructure under new leadership. The board didn't care about Mark's vision anymore. They didn't care about his reputation as a tech wunderkind. They cared about their stock options. They cared about the IPO that would make them all wealthy. By midnight, Mark Sterling was no longer the CEO of Aegis Security Solutions. He was offered a position as Chief Technology Advisor, with no voting rights and a fraction of his previous salary. The board brought in an experienced CEO from outside, someone who actually knew how to run a public company. Mark's shares were diluted to almost nothing to cover the misallocated funds he'd spent on Mia. Everything he'd built, everything he'd become, evaporated in a single night. News of Mark's removal spread through the company like wildfire. By morning everyone knew. The billion-dollar IPO was in jeopardy. The untouchable CEO had fallen. And the reason? His wife actually owned everything. Mia found out the same way everyone else did, through office gossip and panicked texts from junior employees. She realized that the stagnant housewife she'd mocked actually held the keys to the kingdom. And more importantly, held the bank accounts. Mark wasn't going to be a billionaire. He was going to be unemployed. Mia didn't even pack her bags properly. She grabbed the jewelry Mark had bought her, most of it purchased with company funds, and disappeared. No breakup text. No explanation. She just vanished, probably already searching for her next wealthy target. When Mark came home to the penthouse that evening, she was gone. The apartment was empty except for a note on the kitchen counter. You said you were a mogul. Turns out you're just a manager. Good luck. Mark called me crying. I didn't answer. I had nothing left to say to him. Mark's lawyer called my lawyer the next morning. Mr. Sterling would like to negotiate terms for the company transition. He's willing to step down completely in exchange for certain concessions. My lawyer, Patricia Chin, smiled at me across her desk. What kind of concessions is he hoping for? He wants to keep his shares. He wants to remain on the board as an advisor. And he wants the house in the divorce settlement. Patricia didn't even need to look at me. She knew the answer. Absolutely not. Mr. Sterling has no leverage. The Apex Trust owns the debt that makes up 40% of the company's capital structure. We're prepared to execute a debt-for-equity swap that will give Mrs. Sterling and her father controlling interest in Aegis. There was a long pause. Then Klein's voice, defeated, "What does Mrs. Sterling want?" I leaned forward to the speakerphone. I want the truth to go public. I want everyone to know that Mark Sterling didn't build a billion-dollar company alone. I want the business journals to print the real story. And I want him out. Completely. And the house? Klein asked quietly. That's the best part, I said, smiling. The house Mark thinks I'm keeping in the divorce? It's not in my name. It's in my father's name. It was his gift to us for our wedding. Mark's been living in a house he never owned. He has 48 hours to vacate the penthouse. and he's not getting a penny from the sale of my father's property. My doorbell rang at 2 in the morning, 3 days after Mark's removal from Aegis. I checked the security camera and saw him standing on my porch swaying slightly. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his tie was gone, and he smelled like scotch even through the video feed. "Diane," he said, looking directly at the camera. "Please. I know you're watching. Just let me in. Let me talk to you. 5 minutes." I turned on the microphone. "Go home, Mark." "I don't have a home," he shouted, his voice breaking. "You took everything. The company, the money, the house, everything. I'm staying in a motel, Diane. A motel. After everything I built." "After everything we built," I corrected coldly. "And you didn't lose it. You threw it away. For a 24-year-old girl who didn't even stay long enough to help you pack." He pressed his forehead against the door. I was confused. Mia was a mistake. She made me feel young and powerful and, I don't know, I was stupid. "Can we just go back? Can we fix this? For the girls." I stared at him through the screen. This man had stood in my dining room 12 days ago and called me stagnant. He'd told me I was a starter wife. He'd said I didn't match his trajectory. "I've outgrown you, Mark," I said, using his own words. "You're just not on my trajectory anymore. You're not on anyone's trajectory. You're standing still, broke and alone while I'm moving forward. We're done. Don't come back here again." I turned off the monitor and went back to bed, sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks. The headline in the business journal was brutal. Aegis CEO ousted in funding scandal. Secret investor revealed as wife he tried to divorce. The article was detailed and merciless. It explained how Mark Sterling had built his reputation on money secretly provided by his wife's family. It detailed the embezzlement of company funds to support his mistress. It quoted anonymous board members saying he'd been financially reckless and personally unstable. But the part that went viral on social media was the quote from my father. "My daughter believed in Mark Sterling when no one else did. She gave him the tools to succeed. He chose to use those tools to build a palace and lock her outside. That's not vision. That's ingratitude." Mark's carefully cultivated image, the boy wonder of tech, the self-made mogul, was incinerated overnight. He wasn't a genius. He was a middle-aged man who'd cheated on the woman who'd actually made him successful. The tech world loves a comeback story, but it has no patience for entitled fools. Mark deleted his social media accounts after the comments became too vicious. His LinkedIn profile disappeared. He was no longer the future. He was a cautionary tale. I didn't let Aegis fail. That would have hurt 200 people who'd worked hard and believed in the technology. Good people who'd done nothing wrong except work for the wrong CEO. So I did something Mark never would have done. I took responsibility. Using the Apex Trust, my father and I executed the debt-for-equity swap. We converted the $10 million loan into controlling shares of the company. With the board's approval, they were relieved to have stable leadership. I became the chairwoman of the board of directors. Mark's remaining shares were diluted to almost nothing to compensate for the misused marketing funds. He walked away with roughly 2% equity, enough to technically say he was still a founder, but not enough to have any real power or significant payout from the IPO. I hired a new CEO, brought in a competent CFO, and cleaned up the financial mess Mark had created. Within 2 months, the company was stable again. Within 4 months, we were back on track for the IPO. The business press called it the most dramatic corporate rescue of the year. I didn't do interviews. I just did the work. 6 months after our 20th anniversary dinner, I walked into the Aegis Corner office for the first time as chairwoman. The space had been redecorated. Gone were Mark's ego wall of magazine covers and awards. Instead, it was professional, clean, focused on the future rather than one man's vanity. Mark was there collecting his last few personal items. Security stood by the door, per company policy for terminated employees. He was putting a stapler, a framed photo of his Porsche, and a trophy from some industry award into a cardboard box. He looked up when I walked in. Our eyes met. I saw him searching my face for something, the old Diane maybe. The one who would have forgiven him anything. The one who would have let him crash on the couch and helped him find a new job. The woman who would have sacrificed herself one more time to save his pride. But that woman was gone. She died in a dining room filled with spilled champagne and broken promises. I didn't say anything. I simply walked past him, sat in the executive chair and opened my laptop. Behind me I heard the security guard speak. Sir, you need to leave now. Your building access has been revoked. Can I just, Mark started. Now, sir. I didn't turn around. I didn't watch him leave. I just started working, building something real from the ashes of his ego. Today I'm sitting on my back porch with my father watching the sunset over the garden. My daughters are inside laughing about something on their phones.
Chloe is back at Stanford, fully funded, with a new internship at a company that values her. My younger daughter, Emma, is applying to colleges, confident and secure in her future. The Aegis IPO happened 3 months ago. It was successful, even bigger than originally projected. The company is thriving under new leadership. I'm 44 years old, the chairwoman of a major tech firm, and I'm finally living a life that isn't a secret. I still drive a practical car. I still wear comfortable clothes. I still prefer quiet dinners at home to fancy restaurants. But now, no one can call me stagnant. No one can say I don't match the speed of life. I set the speed. Mark is living in a one-bedroom apartment across town, working as a mid-level consultant at a firm that hired him out of pity. The tech industry has a long memory, and his reputation never recovered. He sends child support on time, because if he doesn't, my lawyers will destroy what little he has left, but he rarely sees the girls. They've lost respect for him, and I can't say I blame them. My father reaches over and squeezes my hand. You did good, sweetheart. You gave him every chance. I did. I agree. But I'm done giving chances to people who don't value them. The sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. 20 years ago, I would have called Mark outside to watch this with me. I would have held his hand and talked about our dreams. Now, I'm just grateful to be free. Free from the weight of someone else's ego. Free from playing small so someone else can feel big. Free from being a secret. I didn't just survive 20 years of marriage. I won them. And more importantly, I won myself back. My phone buzzes with a message from our new CEO. Board meeting tomorrow at 9. Ready to discuss Q4 strategy. I smile and type back. Ready. Tomorrow, I'm not someone's wife or someone's mother or someone's secret investor. I'm Diane Mitchell-Sterling, and I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Not behind anyone. Not beside anyone. In front, leading, building something that doesn't need someone else's name on it to matter. The champagne I'm drinking tonight isn't for an anniversary. It's for a beginning. And this time, no one's knocking it over.